Africa has endured droughts, poverty, terrorism, and civil war. Following a long history of colonial exploitation, dictatorship, and political unrest, winds of change are blowing across the African continent. Peace is desperately needed for a new Africa to be built. What does a new Africa mean? It means development. I believe that this event is the first step towards the peace that Africa needs. Africa is the continent of the future, and that future begins today. What kind of new hope and vision do these people want for Africa? What kind of new hope and vision do these people want for Africa? Senegal is a northwest African nation located on the Atlantic coast with a population of 14.6 million. Senegal's total surface area is slightly smaller than that of the Korean Peninsula, and it is the central nation of West Africa. Senegal's main tourist attraction, Lake Ratba. Lake Ratba's pink waters are caused by algae and similar to the Dead Sea. It is known for its high salt content. This is one of the most mysterious and beautiful natural phenomena found in Senegal. 95% of the country's population is estimated to be Muslim. However, Senegal had a Christian president for 20 years, which sets it apart from other Muslim nations. From early in the morning, people have been crowding into the Abdou Diouf International Conference Center, located in Dakar, the capital of Senegal. People of all walks of life, including politicians, religious leaders, and tribal chiefs, wearing their traditional attire, crowded into the venue for this event. I spent many months preparing to attend this event. This is the first time I have attended a conference like this to discuss world peace. Here in Africa, we also have many meetings with heads of state and government officials to advocate for a peaceful world. However, the 2018 Africa Summit is different from those meetings because it is a gathering of all people.
This summit has been very, very important to us as religious leaders and also as the people of Africa as a whole, because peace is a very fundamental issue in the life of people.
The International Center garnered a tremendous amount of attention and participation from the entire African continent. A total of 1,200 Africans, including Senegal President Macky Sall, 20 current presidents and acting presidents, 11 former presidents and prime ministers, 35 national ministers, and countless parliamentarians, religious leaders, tribal chiefs, and youth leaders attended the event. The opening ceremony began with prayers from a Christian bishop and a Muslim imam to symbolize religious harmony, as religious disputes have been a major source of conflict in Africa.
That you brought Muslims and Christians together. You brought Jews and Hindus together, including many other religions and different cultures. Because of this, O Heavenly Parent, we know that one day soon you will give us a perfect peace that lasts forever.
Monsieur le Président de la République, Mesdames, Messieurs.
Esteemed Mr. President, and ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Hak Ja Han Moon has lived her entire life for peace. Dr. Hak Ja Han Moon addressed politicians and religious leaders from all over Africa, proclaiming a vision of a new Africa that will attend God.
아프리카에 아픈 과거를 청산하고 서로 소통하고 전쟁이 필요 없는 높고 낮음이 없는 자유, 평등, 평화, 통일의 행복한 아프리카로 만들어가고 싶습니다. 감사합니다.
Senegal President Macky Sall responded to this message with a declaration of his support for a new Africa. I believe that the theme of this event, New Africa, Interdependence, Co-prosperity, and universal values, was very wonderful. I believe in a new Africa. I believe in a prosperous Africa. The audience applauded in response to this conviction and determination to work toward a new Africa. The theme of this conference is incredible. Nothing is more important than peace. We can't buy peace with money. We can't measure the value of peace with money. Peace is absolutely necessary for our lives.
We've heard from different realities of different countries within the continent of Africa. This will greatly assist us in knowing one another. When you build them together, it will give a fruitful outcome for the benefit of the entire continent as a whole.
This determination to revive Africa is well represented by the African Renaissance Monument that was completed in 2010. This monument, which was constructed in commemoration of the 50th anniversary of Senegal's independence, symbolizes the removal of all constraints and advancement toward freedom and prosperity. Senegal, as well as the rest of the African continent, is at the peak of its construction and development. However, the obstacle to this effort comes from within the nations. We are living in a world of chaos caused by violence. Armed terrorists are committed to this kind of violence. We are also living in a world where national leaders maintain their political authority, even after their term ends, and the Constitution is far removed. All of these issues pose a threat to peace. This year alone, 13 people were killed by gunfire from armed forces in Senegal, a comparatively safe nation. Furthermore, acts of terror that have occurred in Somalia and other nations pose a threat to peace and development throughout the continent. We must take a step further if we wish to develop. The most important task is to raise the consciousness of the people. People must realize the necessity in dissolving the factors that hinder peace. In the midst of these circumstances, Dr. Hak Ja Han Moon brought a vision of peace and prosperity to Africa.
실질적으로 나는 아프리카 최남단에 있는 희망봉에서부터 아프리카 대륙을 거쳐 유럽 대륙, 유라시아, 아시아로 해서 한국으로 통하는 평화 고속도로를 제창합니다.
For you to go from one nation to the other, you must be stopped at the border, and you have to take almost 3 or 4 hours. Yet in the same Africa, when you go to Europe, it's an expressway. You move from one country to the other because there's no unity. For us to see a new Africa is to fight disunity.
In the following session, the Sema Ul Undong, or the New Community Movement, was introduced as an example of the direction that Africa can take. The session also promoted the utilization of Africa's strengths, particularly the coffee industry, to achieve self-sustained economic growth. We will work harder to establish a nation of democracy and sound government in order to usher in a brighter future for Africa. We can follow Korea's example of rising in the 1960s as a strong nation despite the obstacles. If we can walk a similar path as Korea, Africa will be able to develop and grow.
This is our hope, and machinery is already on. Many MOU has been signed already. We learn from each other, and we learn also from Unification Family. We learn from also the same old exemplary way of doing things, and we want to implement those MOU.
Ja Han Moon to spearhead the great gospel of peace.
Media from Senegal and other African nations competed to cover the event.
Alors, on a parlé d'une Afrique nouvelle.
Today, we discuss the idea of a new Africa. A new Africa will have no civil war or conflicts. Democracy will be established, and future generations will live in prosperity and keep pace with globalization. Many African politicians attended this conference prepared to discuss world peace. This event was broadcast live through Senegal's national news station RTS and covered in newspapers and magazines all across the African continent. TV5 from France also covered the event and broadcasted it in Europe.
신아프리카 공영과 보편적 가치라는 주제로
세계 평화 통일 가정연합.
Korean news outlets also spread the news of Africa's renewed convictions to the Korean people. On the second day, the participants of the African summit headed to Senegal's Gorée Island, which had served as an outpost for slave trading in the past and is presently a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Upon their arrival, Dr. Hak Ja Han Moon and the Africa Summit participants were welcomed by the mayor of Gorée Island.
It was a place of suffering of mankind. It was a place of deportation of peoples by other peoples. And now, when we have the opportunity to receive here somebody who is renowned all around the world as promoting peace for all the peoples, it is a great moment for us.
The group's first stop was at a statue celebrating the liberation of slaves. The statue portrayed the pain and longing of the slaves that were sold from this location to all corners of the world. Down the road, there is a building that sits on the coast, which ends up being a slave house. Slaves were openly sold from this house. Once slaves were sold, they were confined to small rooms in groups of 15 to 20 and tied up in chains until they were shipped to the buyer. In this place of little to no sunlight, many young children and elderly were unable to survive these living conditions. A door lies at the end of the hall, and the slaves who exited this very door never returned. The slaves' suffering would reach its peak at the ocean. The slaves would be herded onto boats like packs of animals in chains, and 40% of them would not survive the trip. The religious leaders conducted a ceremony to liberate and comfort the souls of those who had suffered at this very location. Together they prayed that the suffering and pain of these slaves could be transformed into seeds of peace, that their spirits could experience eternal freedom. A small ceremony was held to present a nameplate to notable persons that had visited Gorée Island. Gorée Island created a nameplate to honor Dr. Hak Ja Han Moon's peace activities.
Inside the slave house, there was a moment of prayers, and the holy woman delivered prayer for all the people who was there, for Gorée Island, but also for all the world. And it is very important. We receive many, many people, but this day is particular for us, and we'll never forget it.
Dr. Hak Ja Han Moon's investment and concern for Africa can be traced back to her trip to Africa with Reverend Sun Myung Moon in 1995. Since then, she has urged for the liberation of Africa from war and poverty by promoting the restoration of family values and education.
Their feeling towards Africa was always a feeling of trust and confidence and compassion and empathy for what Africa has been through. And yet their feeling was also that Africa can become the greatest continent in the world once Africa can walk along the direction that can bring harmony and unity and development.
Religious leaders who empathize with this sentiment have gradually spread these peace activities across the African continent. As a result, the International Association of Parliamentarians for Peace was inaugurated in West, Central, and East Africa in 2016. Upon this foundation, the African Parliamentarians for Peace was also inaugurated during the Africa Summit on the continental level. This laid the groundwork for a continent divided by religion and language to come together as a united Africa. I think it is worth recognizing that the introduction of a bill that advocates for universal values is an incredible result of this gathering of many African politicians.
We will not throw here, we will not leave this what we have had here and go back to our country. We will also take it and go and enlighten them so that they can get the idea to avoid violence, extremism, child abuse, so many things. I discussed so many things.
The Interreligious Association for Peace and Development, which was inaugurated last year to resolve religious conflict and promote peace, was also inaugurated in Africa. It serves as a mediator between groups of deep-seated religious conflict and terrorism to help guide them toward a new Africa.
International Association of Religious Leaders for Peace and Development is something that has been overdue, and it is the first page that has been opened to try and give power also to religion as far as decisions regarding peace and development are concerned.
An interreligious association like this can combat religious extremism. We must pay more attention to these issues. As religious leaders, we need to raise our voices and condemn this extremism. The most influential tribal leaders of Africa also formed an association for peace. This paved the way for the vision of peace and development to spread across the entire African continent. I want to thank Reverend Hak Ja Han Moon and Dr. Hak Ja Han Moon for giving us this great opportunity and teaching all people about peace. They have taught us that a world without peace has no meaning. All people need peace in order to be free. We adopted the Senegal Peace Declaration here at this conference, but we need everyone to unite on bringing its realization. As a way of keeping pace with this effort, I am thinking of creating a peace plaza in my village when I return. Then people will be able to gather at the Peace Plaza to discuss peace. There is no development without peace, and there is no peace without development. Through the Dakar Peace Declaration, the 2018 African Summit rediscovered the value and potential of Africa. In a new Africa, there would be no conflict and all African nations would work together. I believe that a new Africa would have equality, justice, and no corruption. Africa may have been a forgettable continent, but now Africa will be able to rediscover its cultural values and spiritual values. As Africans continue to recognize the fact that disunity will prevent the continent from overcoming its past and changing its present, we will come to witness a new Africa that will heal itself and pursue a world of peace for the future.